So we had a conference in 2015 where we brought all the sectors together to say, look, we've made some really big gains in what we're doing as a sector, but to take us to that next level, we want to be able to engage with community on a more sophisticated approach. And I guess as service providers, you're always engaging with the community at that service level focus, but this was talking about taking it to a governance level, if you like, in terms of, well, how can we have community putting forward their ideas for solutions, as well as the service providers or the sectors putting together their ideas. But there wasn't really a platform for that type of thinking to come together as one. And so as part of the discussion, it was, well, how do we form that and how we bring that together? And we looked at other models. So we looked at what a collective impact had done in other areas.
In the early work, we ended up communicating with Kerry Graham from Collaboration for Impact, and she came and facilitated a 2-day conference here in June in 2015. And in the second part of that workshop, we ran a World Cafe, and that was around what would we need to do to build the foundations for change in a new model. So the elements that came out of that became quite clear towards the end of the conference. And so we were pretty excited as a group of services about taking on that next change step. So that led into what we called our 90-day plan. It took longer than 90 days, but we set up a number of transitional working groups. One was around first forming the backbone team to help convene some of this work. And we drew on some existing partnerships with the PCP and the Rural City Council for staffing. And we formed transitional working groups. We soon called them twigs because we wanted them to help us see both through the forest and the trees, this change work. So we had a transitional working group that looked at what were going to be our principles to guide our work, to set the standards for our collaborative effort. We then also set up a working group around communication and engagement, because to do things differently, to really truly engage with our community, we would need to do quite a bit of investigation on how to do that. Also, that group was to look at the early components of marketing and branding, and making sure the communication between all the transitional groups was strong, because we're all working pretty quickly on this 90-day plan. Another transitional working group we formed was around shared measurement and what data would we need to take to our community to build a compelling case for change. Very quickly, that group got renamed as the Research Evaluation Measurement Group, and it was charged with developing an infographic of some of our community data to take out. And we felt we needed in a different format as well to reach some of the younger people. So we built an animation around our data as well. So they were important materials to have as resources to take out.
The community conversations allowed a safe space for community to come together to talk about their aspirations and their goals and what they love about the community they live in, but also to tell us where they think we should be working on or some of the concerns that they had. The community conversations were also, so that I feel like they had two real goals. We were wanting to hear from our community, but we also saw it as an opportunity to inform our community of our data. And we wanted to do that in a way that wasn't confronting, but we wanted to show that this is our community's reality. This is what people in our community are facing. So we did that through, we created an animated video which presented that it showed 900 babies were born each year, roughly 900 babies are born each year, and if things stayed the same, this is what that would happen for those 900 babies throughout their life course. And so that video, I feel we got a lot of, it got a lot of impact. People were probably, a lot of people were shocked. a little bit confronted, but it also created a lot of energy and a lot of momentum. People saying, why don't we know about this data? How did we not know about this data? But also, what can we do? How can we work together to make change? And that helped to inform people's perception on where we should be focusing.
We're trying to communicate some data around the situation that a lot of our families live with. And Mildura is a beautiful lifestyle place, but it does have a pocket of disadvantage underlying the community. And it can be very much that some parts of the community don't actually know, are unaware of the challenges that some of our families face. So we chose data from that would give some indicators about our families and their challenges for raising their children, the social determinants of health, some around children's progress academically through school, their connectedness to school, and some other broader community data that gave an indication of, I guess, the parenting age of the parenting rates in teenagers and things like that. Before you go out with your data, I think it's good to go and test it with some young people as well as adults. We took our first attempt at an animation for communicating our data to youth, and that group destroyed us in about one session, and we had to come back and really rethink how we did that. So I think that's really valuable learning, and I think you've got to be brave enough to just put your work out there in a test case and say, is this going to cut it? Is this going to communicate this with respect? And we learned a lot from those young people, and I think we got a much better result for doing that type of thing. And I think that's, there's such a pressure of time to get things done quickly in this day and age. I think it's important just to go a little bit more slowly and test things when you're going to do a big effort with the community.
There was talk about the Expert 40 or the table of 40, which had different sectors come together where you had business, community members and the various sectors come together and talk about the problems that we faced. So at the time, that was sort of thinking, well, this would be a good idea. So you had your leadership forum that was made up of those groups, and we would go forward and sort of try and get that happening within the community. When we tested that to see, well, who in community wants to be a part of it, there was a fair bit of take up for that, and that I think now it's called the leadership table. So and that still meets, but now we're sort of going to the next level again to suggest, well, how does that work in creating a bigger impact than what we first thought.
And then the last working group that we formed was to look at establishing a table of 40. I was charged to identify which community leaders out there would be willing to participate on a leadership table, with a view that they would be advising and supporting the work towards gathering the community's aspiration or agenda. We felt that it was very important to have a very wide invitation to be part of those working groups. And over a period of time, we found that it was important to have a loose, tight approach to those, because we had to rely on people contributing their time and energy for nothing. And so we really took an attitude that lean in and help when you can and where you can. And if you need to lean out, that's fine, because we invite you to lean in any other time thereafter. And I think that's really worked for us. It gave a sense that it wasn't a closed, tight container. It was something that people could come in and out of as they had the time and energy.
Relationships are the key to the work that we do. And that can take time. And it should take time to build really strong relationships. And there can be times, there were times when we were building those foundations of collective impact. That took about 2 years for us to really build our strong foundations of what we were doing. But there can be pressure on outsiders saying, what are you doing? What are you achieving? What are your outcomes and your actions? And sometimes it's really hard to measure that foundational work in terms of just building relationships, building that understanding of what we're doing, working towards our shared vision and goal, talking with our community, that all takes time to be able to then say, well, this is where we want to head.